What's happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to what's today? Thursday show. 3-game Thursday. Play anybody you want Thursday. Lot of cheap action on board today. Larry C says 89-minute show at least. Yeah, I said on Twitter when I sent it out, I said 89 and a half for the over-under. So we'll see what happens. 3 games, half hour per game, feels about right. Lot to talk about. I mean, it's not uninteresting on a day where you can basically play whatever combinations of things that you want. We've got a really, really expensive peak of the show, of the slate, obviously, in terms of the pitching pool. But if Spencer Strider doesn't really work out, this thing could go in any different direction. So I really think it's interesting to talk about that way. I think everybody on the slate in terms of the hitters needs to be discussed. So a lot to go through. Looks like we've got most of the regulars here in the chat for the early start. 4 o'clock start today. Podija and Stoner's here from Garden City, Weld County, Colorado today, excuse me. I assume that Garden City's in Weld County, Colorado, but he switched it up on me. Matt Tomlinson's here, D's here, Trey's here, Larry C. Fanatic, Steven Leibowitz. Steven says, I'm ready to hang on till 6. Let's get microscopic. I wrote a pretty deep article. I took like an hour for each game. Normally I'm trying to get like 3 games into an hour and knock them out like 20 minutes a game when I'm writing the long version of the article. And then when it's a big day and I do the shorter versions with the bullet points, I try and knock it down even further than that. Today I was just like, I had the TV on. I was just like winding my way through these games, looking at every little thing. So fun times. A lot of stuff up in the article. But yeah, a lot to go through. I'm going to refer to the article as we go. All the different home run picks for the 3 games are updated. Power index. It's kind of a limited slate of opportunities. Well, it's interesting because it's a limited slate, but it creates all sorts of opportunities, right? I meant to, let me add Jake Young's handedness in here. I know you guys can't see the screen just yet, but I'm just dropping in. Meant to add the handedness for Mr. Jacob Young, who I'd forgotten to add to the player pool. Alrighty. Alright, that should take care of that. So, yeah, what's going on with you guys? Nice casual Thursday. We can hang out. We can chat a little bit. Not sure if I'm going to get out to see Oppenheimer tonight or not, like I was originally talking about. Just feeling a little bit lazy, to be quite honest. I don't know if I'm going to feel up to going into the city and trekking up to Lincoln Square, and I haven't checked whether there's any tickets for it or anything, but, yeah. I went to the bodega just before, grab a little snack before the show, because I hadn't eaten anything, had just had coffee for the last, like, I don't know, 18 hours or whatever. So I got myself one of those little tuna kits again. I got one of these things. All right, so one of these. One string cheese thing, and a Snickers bar. What are we thinking price-wise? Would it shock you guys to say that cost me $8.25? It kind of shocked me. Place is getting out of hand with their markups. I'm used to paying a lot for things, but I mean, for a tiny thing of tuna, 3 crackers, a Snickers bar, and a cheese stick, I could have gotten a burger for $8.25. Kind of pissed. Larry was going to say 10. 10 if I had gotten a can of soda. Manhattan Series is pretty good as a pregame for Oppenheimer. I might check that out. These companies are giving us smaller portion sizes and increasing the price. Ah, get off my lawn. That is actually true. You see that a lot with, like you go to the, with the supermarket, right? The can of Skippy or whatever, the peanut butter and things like that. Same exact size jar if you look at it dimensionally, but now it's got like a big dent through the bottom that takes like 2 ounces out of the size, but it's deceptive. It's made to look like it's the same size jar, and you're paying more for it after inflation and the markups and everything. So yeah, on a per ounce basis, we're probably paying so much more than what it was 20 years ago. But it's just bonkers in these like these guys specifically over here at the bodega. There's a bodega on that corner, and there's a supermarket 2 blocks that way. If I went to the supermarket, I'd pay half the price, because these guys literally just buy it at the supermarket down the block over there, take it over here, put it on the shelf, and mark it up by 30% or whatever. So I shoot myself in the foot that way, but the bodega is so much closer. It's right there. It's literally like next door. Anyway, tuna is good protein, D. I agree. That's why I grabbed it. Like I said the last time, I think last week when I got one, I was just like, it's with nothing fueling me, like, just before I jump on the show. It's a nice little, like Popeye with his spinach kind of a thing. Now we're getting into it. Trey says it really isn't true capitalism free market when basically 5 to 6 companies pretty much own everything else, not to mention BlackRock, but that's another story. Yeah, that's another show. Yeah, it is kind of absurd with the condensing of these companies in basically all these different industries. Larry says that's like going to Wawa and paying $4 for a 2-liter of Diet Coke. God, does he give those things away? All right, let's get into this. Time to pull up the board. So, 3 games. Tiny little run board. Everything looking roughly the same. Braves at about half the run total they were at yesterday, but they're not in Coors Field anymore, facing Lance Lynn. Dodgers at under 4, facing Spencer Strider, but a little higher than a lot of teams get against Spencer Strider. About a quarter of a run, half a run higher than a lot of teams land against Strider. So not nothing. Obviously a really tough opponent for the best pitcher on the slate. These guys, all roughly about even. There's not that much daylight between a 4.08, a 4.51, a 3.89, and a 4.76. It's all roughly equivalent mid-range kind of teams, mid-range kind of matchups. I do think the Braxton Garrett is an interesting option. We'll talk about the pitchers in just a second. But I think these games could really go any direction, these 2 games. This one's going to be critical, obviously. It's also really interesting because this one gets rolling at 7:05. It'll probably be over before this one starts at 9:40. And then there's another half hour before this one gets rolling at 10:10. And this one's got just, obviously gobs of talent, where the other ones are like, this team, obviously the Padres has their top-heavy core of 4 stars, but there's a lot of spotty talent in this lineup, mixed bag of talent in this lineup, same here. So it's going to be a really funky, weird slate. I expect there's going to be a ton of ownership and a lot of changing scores late in the night. So if you're inclined to go to bed early, things might look really, really different by the time you wake up. Larry says, it's funny, the only price I realize is Poland spring water and Diet Coke. 2 things I buy the most. Tap water for me, my friend, and I still go for the traditional Coke. Still not on board with the diet sodas routine. I just don't love the taste. I've talked about it before, I think, but like the Diet Sunkiss, the Diet Orange I like, but the regular Diet Coke, something about the taste I doesn't really do it for me. Phil digging in on BlackRock, $10 trillion in assets under management. That's more than the GDP of every country in the world except for the United States and China. Mike Palm's here, just in time for the BlackRock conversation. What's up, Mike? Tell us what your favorite hedge fund is. Hit the like button. Hello, Terry, Joker, and rotoscouts crew. What's going on, bud? Welcome to the show. Just kind of getting into things. You haven't missed much. We're just shooting the breeze a little bit on a light day. 4 o'clock, 4:10. All right. So scrolling over to the pitching board. Oh, it's all the way down here. One man stands alone at the peak of the mountain, separated by 5 points or so over the next highest projected guy. There is not much of a gap between Lance Lynn at the bottom of the board and Braxton Garrett in the second spot. Obviously a bit broader of a gap between Lynn and Strider, but I think Lynn's got a roughly close ceiling. He's probably got the best ceiling, better than all these guys. So these guys are facing each other on opposite ends of the board. This guy's got easily the clearest ceiling on the board. He's got the highest projection. He's also by far the most expensive at $12,000, $12,500. You drop all the way down to $9,500, $8,800 for Lance Lynn. That's a major, major discount for a very good pitcher. He's had his bumps this year, but under the surface, he's pitched a lot better. The strikeouts are still there. He's just facing a deadly good lineup in Atlanta. So this one could really, I think there's Spencer Strider's the clear ceiling, but he also kind of knows where the basement is on this one. Like he knows his path to the basement as much as Lance Lynn knows his path from the basement to the ceiling or to the attic to make the analogy a little bit clearer. So I do think that either one of these pitchers could either break the slate in either direction. They could either succeed or fail in dramatic fashion to bend the slate, regardless of where they're projected on opposite ends of this board. So Lance Lynn very much in play on this slate. Don't take this to mean that he's not. All these guys in the middle, it's going to get weird. Braxton Garrett is a talented pitcher, but the Nationals are very good against left-handed pitching. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. He just had a non-spectacular, not overly successful start against them last week. Not that that's predictive in any way, but it's at least representative of what I think it was more of a floor game for him. It's obviously not a ceiling game. We'll talk about it in just a second. But I do think he's kind of the clear-cut next best guy. Then we've got Pedro Avila and Juan Adon facing one another. Or, excuse me, Adon facing Braxton Garrett and Avila facing Sean Manaea and an opener. So, really mixed quality for Avila and Adon. Neither one of them is comfortable. Both of them are very, very cheap on both sites. And then you've got kind of high upside bulk reliever Sean Manaea lurking here. 7,300, 5,000. This is very playable on the DraftKings slate. Avila and Manaea are both less playable on FanDuel, where we have to worry a little bit, at least, even on a limited slate, about the quality start bonus, where they only care about wins for the cheap pricing. Obviously, that's a lot better over there. But I think every single one of these pitchers is playable today. And I think if you're building 150 lineups, you kind of should be playing all these cheap guys. Limited paths to success, but they all project out basically the same. So it's a really mixed bag of quality. It's a day where you really, really have to embrace the strange, the embrace some risk on the mound, embrace some of the lower lineup hitters at the plate. A lot of the guys, even in the popular lineups, even in the obvious spots, tend to go a little bit underowned from the bottoms of the lineup, where on a very limited slate, a day where a couple base hits and a couple runs scored or a stolen base could make all the difference in the world. Those guys are underappreciated on slates like this. So I think it's really important to focus on, mixing up some lineups, getting some randomness in there when you're doing your lineup build so that you can get a good shakeup of the combinations within the stacks that you build. I also think, like we've talked about on other small slates, it's really important on a slate like this, not necessarily to embrace so much differentiation that you're rostering hitters against your pitcher. You can do that on a slate with 3 games. I don't prefer to. I like to do that on 2 games. And focus it just in that kind of a situation. 3 games, I still think there's enough to work with where you don't need to do that and take the negative with the positive. You can, and you could certainly do it with some of the home run hitters. That might be a reasonable option for a slate like this, but I don't like doing that. What I do like doing on a slate like this is opening myself up to more differentiated stack combinations. In FanDuel, speak like a 3-3-1-1. A 2-3 man stacks with 2 different one-offs from different teams, or a 3-3-2 in that kind of a format. A 4-man with 4 one-offs is not completely wild in a FanDuel stack. Obviously on DK you're doing that more anyway with 5 mans and 5-2-1s and 5-3s with 3 individual hitters. I do think it pays to differentiate on both sites, though. Start building different combinations because, A, there is so much cheap pitching that it just affords you the ability to do that. You can build 2 pretty good 3-mans from, to spoil the placeholder that I've got. I've got a Nationals 3-man with 3 high-end guys against lefties that are less popular than the obvious guys, and then a Giants 3-man that I like with 2 premium one-offs and Spencer Strider. So you can do things like that on a slate like this, where I think it's not so much that we're chasing full stacks across the board. I do still want to have at least 3-man stacks in most of my lineups, or all of my lineups, really. And I think it's very difficult to even build a lineup without stacking at least a couple hitters on a 6-team slate. But I do want to embrace a lot of differentiation on a slate like this. Greg Biancones here says, perfect day here in New Jersey. I agree. Joker and I will be taking a walk a little bit later on. Matt Tomlinson says, Cleve only 5 back. I guess they're still going for it. They're talking about the picking up Giolito. Yeah, it seems like they do think they've got a shot. Which is just weird with how bad they've been all season. So, first game up. Talked about Braxton Garrett ranking 2nd overall on the board. 134 innings, 24.3% strikeouts, a microscopic 3.8% walk rate. 3.96 ERA with a very good 3.22 xFIP. He's been pitching very well this season. He was the victim of some short starts in a lot of situations, but he typically is working 5 or 6 innings. There's not really any major issue with going to Garrett outside of the fact that he gives up a little bit in terms of the hard hits, but he checks launch angle. So you don't really worry too much about the 47.7% hard hits, the 90.9 miles an hour of exit velo. When he makes mistakes, they do travel a little bit. 3.24% home runs is higher than we would like to see for one of these ground ball focused pitchers. But he's very good. He's adept at finding strikeouts. I think he's got upside even against the Nationals team that is good at creating runs and finding a little bit of power, and very, very good at minimizing strikeouts against lefties, which is where the potentially somewhat limited ceiling comes into play for Garrett. Like I was saying, he just faced them last week. He went 6 innings. He allowed 3 runs on 7 hits, including a home run, and he only struck out 3. I think that's the floor today for Garrett. Like, I don't think he comes out and has a much worse start than that. Maybe they put a couple additional runs on him, and we will be talking about going to the Nationals in a second. But he's a much more talented pitcher than that. So I think he's got ceiling well beyond what he did against his team last week. Like I said, that's in no way predictive of what's going to happen with him tonight. But it is a decent example of what they might do to him in terms of capping his upside, capping what he might be able to get to as far as limiting the strikeouts. I do think he's got a ceiling beyond that for strikeouts, and 6 innings is probably the most we'll see from him. He doesn't typically go beyond that. But for 8,200, 8,700, with the way that he projects across sites, with how talented he is overall, I do think there's a clear need to play Braxton Garrett in a pretty wide swath of lineups. He's also a strong value on the DK slate. You can pair him with Spencer Strider on the DK slate at 8,200. He's a functional SP2 over there. Jonah Doan on the other side of this game, 5.25 ERA, but a 4.68 xFIP, a little bit better in the xFIP. 24 innings over 4 starts, very limited. 20.8% strikeout rate with a 6.3% walk rate. His whip is terrific at 0.96, very small sample again, but he's given up a 4.17% home run rate. 64 2/3 innings, 14 starts last season. He was kind of a disaster. 7.10 ERA, a 5.06 xFIP, 17% strikeouts and 12% walks. Really low end, right? We're just playing the pitcher because he's low priced. I expect this Marlins lineup to succeed against him. Jorge Soler's back in the lineup, so it adds another power bat to the lineup. But since he checks in at 5,400, 6,400, with a very thin pitching slate, with the idea that we're probably getting more depth from him and a shot on the FanDuel slate, a shot at the quality start, versus like options like Sean Manaea, who's not going to have the option to get to the quality start, and Pedro Avila, who may not have 6 innings in his arm. It's really limited in terms of who can book that clean 6 innings. So I think Adon's at least on that board. 3 runs, 6 innings, a couple of strikeouts against the Marlins, that might be enough on a slate like this. 5,400, 6,400 is a nice price offset. He's in no way good. In AAA this season, a 4.62 ERA, a 4.79 xFIP, 20.7% strikeouts, 10.4% walks in 17 starts. In a total vacuum, he is super limited. On a better slate, he's not on the board. On this slate, I think he's on the board, especially for like a value dart. You could throw both pitchers on DK in this one and just try and throw a blanket over the win, as Gunn likes to say. It's a very cheap combination at 82.54, and you're getting a lot of quality out of Braxton Garrett's side of things. And then you get the dart with Adon. I don't think that's completely crazy. 3-game slate. We're embracing some weird approaches, but Adon projects out okay. 25 points. It's comparable to where Garrett is against a similarly up and down, like mid-level kind of a lineup. I think I prefer the Marlins lineup overall on talent, but the Nats have been really good against lefties this year. Nats against lefties, we'll start there. Actually, we'll start with the Marlins, the visitors. So we've got Arias up at the top, 4,600, 2,900. It's down to 349, 391, 446, 127 WRC plus. Obviously, this is still a spectacular triple slash, but it's not as good as he was, a couple months ago when he was chasing Ted Williams. Let's see what his recent stretches look like. What does August look like? August has been 229, 236, 333. Ouch. 49 WRC plus for Luis Arias through August. Worst month of the season by far. Before we got to August, his lowest batting average month was 330 in May with a 380 on base. That'll crater your opportunity to hit 400 pretty quick. Still a very, very good leadoff weapon, though, ahead of Jorge Soler. All his power, 15.1% barrels, 47.5% hard hits for Soler this season. Massive home run total at 35, a 274 ISO, a 124 WRC plus, 5,300, 3,300. He's pretty cheap on the FanDuel slate, fairly priced on DK. But that's a cheap power hitting outfielder on the... Did he get scratched? Shit. Thanks, Lar. Well, take what I just said about Jorge Soler out. He is... I was just about to get to the fact that he was back in the lineup after missing yesterday with a sore hip. So, are you sure about that, Larry? Because this lineup just came out like a half hour ago, and he's in it. I hadn't seen that he got scratched. I take your word for it, obviously, but just want to make sure you didn't read the note wrong. All right, so yeah, if he's out, that obviously takes a premium bat out of the Marlins lineup. It enhances the spot slightly for terrible Juan Adon. Doesn't make him a good pitcher or all that much more likely to succeed, but it's definitely a major, major source of power out of there 1 minute ago. All right, thanks, Larry. So we'll grab the new one when we get it. Did it say who goes in? Let me reload here on Lab, see if they grabbed it. Well, presumably most of the other guys that we're about to talk about are still here. I can't imagine they scratched a bunch of guys. So we'll skip down to Josh Bell, 3,600, 2,800, 240, 321, 419. Still some work to be done in the triple slash, but a pretty good contact profile, 10.4% barrels, 41.5% hard hits on the season. Walks at a good clip at 10.6, strikes out 21.5. So he's putting the ball in play or drawing walks in a fair number of his plate appearances. He's up to 19 homers, a 179 ISO. Those are respectable enough. They're not great totals for a guy who should be hitting for better power than he does, but a 105 WRC plus kind of rescued his season after getting out of Cleveland. Last year he had 17 homers. The year before he had 27 in 568 plate appearances with a 215 ISO. This is the guy we're searching for. On the right day, this is the guy we get for DFS purposes, and it's a very nice spot. So if I'm building stacks of Marlins, especially now that Soler is out of the lineup, Josh Bell becomes kind of a priority bat. Very cheap for that spot, 3,600, 2,800, good run creation position in what is a good opportunity. It's not like Adon is a blow-him-away strikeout pitcher. He allows plenty of premium contact, all these home runs, 44.9% hard hits, a fly ball-oriented pitcher. So there's plenty of power opportunity on deck for the Marlins today. Just trying to get that lineup. Oh, there's the... Thanks, guys. So, Bell, then Berger, Cruz, Sanchez. So, Garrett Hampson slots into the lineup. That is Garrett Hampson down from Jorge Soler. Minor downgrade. Minor dip in power. That is a dramatic difference. Garrett Hampson has 27 home runs in 1,437 Major League plate appearances for his entire career, most of which came while playing in Colorado. 11 home runs was the most he's ever hit in one season. After that, 8, then 5. Jorge Soler has 35 this year. So, yeah, big downgrade there. Let's see if I can do this on the fly. So, wait, what was that? It was Bell, Berger, Chisholm. Damn it, there's still 2 spaces there. Think that's right. So Hampson slots in dead minimum price at least. Second base outfield. Dead minimum on FanDuel. 3 positions, adding shortstop to the mix. This season, 158 plate appearances, 1 long ball, 3 steals, 273, 348, 381 isn't terrible. A 103 WRC plus. I mean, he's a hit tool and speed kind of a guy. That's really what you're looking for out of Garrett Hampson. He's obviously not a home run hitter by any means. This was his good season in 21 with the Rockies. 11 homers, 17 steals. Never really, and only had a 65 WRC plus that year, by the way, because he got on it at 289 clip. So has yet to really deliver anything that he's supposed to do in terms of the hit tool. Technically, this is his best season for what he's supposed to do in the small sample in the triple slash. He just should be out there looking to hit for average and getting on base, using his speed a little bit. Has never really delivered on what his prospect pedigree was a number of years ago. But you do have a little bit of power through the middle of the lineup. Jake Berger moving up to the third spot, 4,100, 3,000. Very cheap power from the right side, 17.2% barrels, 48.1% hard hits. More of still a lower end talent, high strikeout rate, low walk rate, not really a three true outcomes guy, just a guy who with incidental premium power and a high strikeout rate. More of a Brent Rooker than a Luis Robert Jr. Jazz Chisholm, very interesting player, power and speed, 13 homers, 17 steals, and only 275 plate appearances. Like I said yesterday, it'd be great to get this guy for a full season and see what he can really do out there. 9.9% barrels, 43.3% hard hits. Jazz Chisholm is a priority bat, especially for 5,000, 3,000. A little bit cheap for his talent, for his ceiling in this matchup. Just bat on ball skills, everything that he does, a multi-category contributor. Probably shouldn't be as cheap as he is hitting cleanup in this lineup in this matchup. I like his opportunity. Jake Berger doesn't clear the bases of these guys. I like Jazz's opportunity for that. Brian De La Cruz, decent mid-range pop, 16 home runs in 523 plate appearances, only a 160 ISO, okay contact. He's very, very cheap, 3,500, 2,700. The triple slash has come down. The run creation is dipped to 5% below average, but I think he's also in play. Jesus Sanchez, I like a little bit better than that. 5.20 in the home run model, not great. Does have a little bit of pop. 10 home runs in 308 plate appearances, a 197 ISO, and a very good contact profile. Another guy who he just got hampered. He looked like he was on the verge of a breakout early in the season, and then he got injured and missed like 3 months. So another guy would have been nice to see him for a full year. Alan S. asks, would you use all three Marlins outfielders to get different on DK? Yeah, or I would include Garrett Hampson in an outfield spot as a differentiator on DK, or even at second base. He'll probably be not that popular and certainly less popular in stacks of Marlins than Luis Arias. So Hampson is at worst like an interesting mixer from late in the lineup. He doesn't have that much talent. He's unlikely to succeed. But again, it's a day where, especially in, if you're looking for just min-price differentiators, a couple of base hits and a couple runs scored might make all the difference in a lineup. So I think it's, I think anything like that, Alan S., is perfectly viable here. And I actually like, if we're just talking about the three exclusive outfielders, Chisholm, De La Cruz, and Sanchez, I actually like all three of those players, and I like the spot for all three of those guys in the lineup. It's just a big downgrade not having Jorge Soler as another outfield option in that lineup, obviously. But it does kind of, if you think about it in a different way, taking Soler out of this spot does maybe in some universes mean that there are now run RBI opportunities for a big knock for one of these guys with runners on base that Soler would maybe have otherwise cleared. Just one way to look at the Soler absence. So yeah, to answer your question again in a long, windy kind of a way, I would definitely play. There's no combination of players in my mind on this slate from any given team that is out of the question for things like that. So yeah, absolutely. And that's not typically something I sweat. It's sometimes limiting for combinations in terms of like there are usually very good outfielders from a lot of other teams that you want to get to. So you don't always want to embrace like, three outfielders from this team and, you stack, it winds you up with a couple middle infielders from your secondary stack who may not be as good as the outfielders on their team. So it's something important to watch, but I never mind that if it happens and it doesn't limit other things, or if it happens in a few lineups and I'm just getting, the full infield from one team or the full outfield from another team. It doesn't really matter that much as long as your combinations are sound. Joey Wendell, Nick Fortes, very weak at the bottom of the lineup. 56 WRC plus in 271 for Wendell and a 53 for Nick Fortes in 272. Pretty weak seasons. Last year, kind of mediocre. 100 WRC plus over 240 for Fortes, 9 homers, 5 steals. 87 for Joey Wendell with 3 homers, 12 steals. Year before that, in 501, Joey Wendell maybe productive. 106 WRC plus, not bad. This doesn't count because it's a very small sample. 501, Joey Wendell gave us 11 homers and 8 steals in 2021. Very low-end option. But again, this is a slate where you can play a little bit of everybody. So if you're building out 20 Marlins stacks across a portfolio of 150 lineups, you probably need even more than that. But Joey Wendell and Nick Fortes should be in a handful of them at least. Did I skip anybody? Talked about Hampson. We talked about Sanchez. We talked about De La Cruz. So yeah, priority bats, top 6. And then Hampson's not completely uninteresting given the multi-position, the min price on both sites. Limited bottom third, though. National side of things, as I said, definitely better against left-handed pitching on this season. I did the full breakdown in the article, so I'm just going to kind of look at some of that as we talk about it. Obviously, again, it's a good left-handed pitcher on the other side. They are facing talent in Braxton Garrett. They're facing a pitcher who doesn't issue all that many free passes. So they're not really, and they're not great at drawing walks anyway. So they're not going to get a lot of cheap opportunities against Garrett. I think the biggest impact they have is probably just limiting his ceiling, like we talked about with the strikeouts. But they do have the opportunity to create some runs here. They do have a little bit of pop against lefties. Overall on the season, 11th in baseball with a 111 WRC plus for the active roster against left-handed pitching and a 17.6% strikeout rate, which is jaw-droppingly good for such a overall limited team. CJ Abrams has been very good since moving to the leadoff spot overall, but against lefties on the season, 146 plate appearances, he drops all the way down to a 55 WRC plus, which is not great. Same-handed matchups, that far below average. He's good in that spot. He's got 3 home runs and 7 stolen bases in that split, but he's got a 178, 264, 295 triple slash. It's a little bit difficult. He has succeeded a little bit more recently in splits against lefties, but this is not totally ideal, not the full version of CJ Abrams necessarily. Can succeed, maybe a little bit less likely, where everybody else on the team tends to gain ground in the split. Lane Thomas, for the season, a 114 WRC plus, their best hitter, 20 home runs, 17 steals, 279, 329, 466. Against lefties, that goes up to a 165 WRC plus in the 173 plate appearances. 8 of the home runs in a quarter of the plate appearances have come against lefties. He's just been a very, very good option in the split. He only costs 4,900, 3,200. That said, he's going to be their most popular player tonight. By far, most people, most casual gamers who go to the Nationals are going to make Lane Thomas their first click. I think there are interesting options that'll go way under-owned by comparison to Lane Thomas, who succeed equally in, maybe less obvious ways against lefties, but are crucial bats to their success against lefties. Joey Meneses will probably also be popular just by virtue of hitting third. He also gains ground against lefties. 285, 332, 417 with a 104 WRC plus and 11 home runs, 42.2% hard hits, and only strikes out 18% of the time. He goes up slightly to a 109 WRC plus against lefties. Only 2 of his 11 home runs in 164 chances, so still doesn't draw all that much power, but a pretty good triple slash, a pretty good run creator against left-handed pitching. So Joey Meneses is on the board. But again, by comparison, he's going to be a lot more owned than like Keibert Ruiz, Ilvin Amaro Vargas, Riley Adams, Alex Call, these guys further down the lineup. They lose a little bit in terms of maybe they're limited to 1 fewer plate appearance, but they've got a lot of quality in the split. Keibert Ruiz, one of the catchers that we talk about quite a bit because he hits in a typically, cleanup oriented spot. He's got a little bit of sneaky power in his bat. He's having a very good season, and he's basically a plays everyday kind of a catcher. So he's always on the board. We talk about him a lot. What goes under discussed, even by us or by me, is 9.6% strikeout rate to go with the pretty good triple slash, the very good power output for a young catcher. 6.3% walks could be higher, but 9.6% strikeouts is spectacular. Puts the ball in play just constantly. Against lefties, that gets even better. 4.6% strikeout rate over 131 opportunities against lefties. Only walks 4.6% of the time. So the ball is just constantly in play with Keibert Ruiz against left-handed pitching. 314, 359, 446 triple slash with a 120 WRC plus against lefties, but only 1 of the home runs and a 132 ISO. So odd power output, but a fantastic triple slash, very good on base, puts the ball in play constantly. So he's always involved in what they're doing against lefties. Critical bat against left-handed pitching on both sites to include in stacks. And he's going to be lower owned than these guys. Carter Kaboom, 3,100, 2,900, 3 quick home runs in just 27 plate appearances, a 150 WRC plus to this point in the season. Didn't play in the show last year. 6 home runs in 249 plate appearances, but a 207, 301, 318 that had him at a 68 WRC plus that season. Is a fairly highly regarded player in terms of when he was on his way up. How old is he now? Debuted in 2019, still only 25. About to turn 26. He's turning 26 on the 3rd. Happy birthday to him. Maybe we get a little extra pop in advance of his 26th birthday, but still a young enough kid. 441 career plate appearances, so verging on a complete season over the course of 4 seasons. 441 plate appearances, 11 homers in his major league career, a 26.5% strikeout rate, a 108 ISO, 69 WRC plus for his career. So needs to get his act together a little bit. For the career, 5 of the 11 home runs have come against lefties, with a 131 ISO and a 95 WRC plus, which is not great, but a dramatic improvement compared to the numbers against righties. All of this is small sample for a kid who might be a good player. At 3,100, 2,900 from the right side, especially if he's hitting here in the lineup, he's definitely involved in most of my stacks of Nationals, or a good amount of my stacks of Nationals. Ildemaro Vargas, 69 WRC plus over 218 plate appearances total, but in 85 plate appearances, limited sample, but in 85 plate appearances against lefties, pops to a 104 WRC plus, 4% better than average creating runs, kind of sneaky option. He has a 207 ISO, 3 of his home runs against lefties, 268, 294, 476. Sneaky little amount of power down there in this spot, with double position eligibility for 2,800 second base, third base on DK, only 2,300 second base, shortstop, and third base on FanDuel. 4 home runs on the season in 218 plate appearances. 3 of them came against lefties in the small sample. A much better ISO against lefties. 118 ISO overall, but like I said, a 207 against left-handed pitching. Not bad. Kind of fits in with the team theme of we oddly connect against lefties. Riley Adams is very much a part of that theme. Second catcher option, assuming he's in the lineup. He typically does play when they face lefties. 149 total plate appearances. He's got 4 home runs, a 207 ISO, and a 121 WRC plus. 3 of the home runs came in just 70 plate appearances against lefties. He's got a 254 ISO in the tiny sample against lefties, with a 349, 414, 603 triple slash. He is definitely going to be lower owned than a lot of the other guys in this lineup. He is a fairly high priority bat when stacking Nationals. 34.26. I don't like him better than Ruiz, but you get him a little bit cheaper. You probably get him at an even lower ownership mark than Ruiz on the DK slate. On FanDuel, I think you could play both of those guys in the same lineup and forgo Joey Meneses in some combinations. Depends on what you're doing, depends on how many you're building, but I think they're both on the board in a dual catcher configuration on the FanDuel slate. Alex Cole, Jacob Young, bottom of the lineup. Cole has a 107 WRC plus, 3 homers, decent triple slash, and 143 plate appearances against lefties this year. 7 total homers on the season, so roughly half of his home runs have come against lefties in much smaller sample of plate appearances. And Young has only had 2 plate appearances in the split against lefties so far. I thought I gave him a little factoid in here, but I guess not. Did I? Alex Cole, Jacob Young, Cole, blah, 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 blah. Well, shit, we're going to have to look up Jacob Young real quick. Got to say something about him. We got to go into detail about everybody on this slate. It's only 439. Jacob Young. Speed. Started the season in high A. 22 steals in 248 plate appearances. 17 in 231 plate appearances in double A. 2 homers in high A, 3 in double A. Not much of a power bat by any means, but a pretty good stolen base total across, what's that, 479 plate appearances. So not bad. Maybe he gets himself to first base, gives you a little bit of speed. Scores a couple runs for 2,200, 2,000 in the outfield. Playable option if he's in the lineup. Where do we skip? Anything? Nothing. Braxton Garrett up top. Marlins bats. Nationals bats. John Adone. Everything's in play. It's going to be a common theme today. Everything is in play. Jake Swales late, but here now. What's up, y'all? What's up, Jake? Welcome, buddy. Welcome. Junis is starting for San Francisco now? Not. I hate when they do this. All right. That's going to change things. What was his... Bear with me one sec. God damn it. So I think we're probably still in a Junis maybe for 2 into Manaea configuration. His last 3 outings, he's only gone 1 2/3, 1, 2. A 4-inning true start on the 15th. I hope we're not getting that. 2/3 of an inning, 3 innings, an inning, 3 innings, an inning, 2 innings, 2 2/3. Ugh, what a mess. He worked on the 26th. Was that the same day Manaea went the last time? I think it was. That could probably be it. Let's see. Yeah, all right. So that's the same setup that they had. Wait, hold on. Did he open that game, though? He didn't. All right. I think that, if I remember correctly, that last time out on the 26th, it was a game against Atlanta. I think they had Walker open for an inning, then Junis came in for 2, and then handed off to Manaea. I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Well, I can confirm that by just actually looking at Walker, who was originally supposed to be the opener today. Yeah, Walker opened that game, went 1 2/3 against the Braves. He handed off to Junis, who went 2, and then he handed off to Manaea, who still worked the bulk relief and went, I think it was 4 2/3. This just creates a giant pain in the ass kind of a situation. Larry, I assume you saw the blurb. Did they give any information about what Walker's doing? Is Walker just off the board? Are they planning on flip-flopping and having Junis open into Walker into Manaea? Did they give any info? That's a pain in the ass. I'm not going to change it up because I still think that Manaea is the key pitcher here. In that start on the, or in that appearance on the 26th, it was 3 2/3, not 4 2/3. Still did have 5 strikeouts. This is against the Braves, so keep things in perspective. 2 earned runs, 3 hits, 1 home run, 2 walks in that 3 2/3. We know Manaea is capable of spiking some upside for strikeouts in these short starts. 2 2/3 of the outing before that, 3 strikeouts. 3 1/3 the outing before that one, 5 strikeouts. 4 innings, 6 strikeouts. Going back a little ways to July 29th, 4 2/3, 5 strikeouts. 5 2/3 before that, 5 strikeouts. All the way back in June, 6 strikeouts. Looks like his peak for the season. 6 strikeouts on August 9th. 6 back in June. Oh, no, he had that 8 strikeout game. That's right. 2 8 strikeout games. One was a traditional start. The first one was a really annoying one. 3 2/3, that game against the Twins back on May 22nd. He struck out 8. I think he won the slate that day. I do think Manaea's got a little bit of upside here, even with the weird limitations, especially if that means that Walker's just off the board and they're going to go Junis 2 and then Manaea might have a shot at 5. That improves his upside. If it's still Junis, somebody, Manaea, and Manaea's only getting 3 and change, then, might limit the upside. Since it's just a dart throw anyway, and since it's primarily a DKSP2 dart throw, for 5,000, I think you do it. I think you can still make that play. Junis isn't entirely without potential, but he's probably only getting an inning or 2. If we get Junis, 72 2/3, does have a 26.4% strikeout rate, 4.09 ERA, a 5.7% walk rate, gives up a decent amount of premium contact that could feed into the Padres' upside. Not great, but could find a handy strikeout total. I just think we're getting him for like 2 innings for the same price as Manaea. I don't know how many times you want to make that odd switch. If you think that they're getting the same innings, if it's like a 3-3 split, they're both probably the same. Whoops. Let's just do it this way. If you think they're getting a 3-3 split or a 3 and change kind of a setup, then there's probably equivalent upside for both pitchers. Manaea's got a 28.5% strikeout rate. He walks more. He's got a 5.05 ERA, but a much, much better 3.85 xFIP, and has been much better in the bulk relief role overall this season. 2.93% home runs, 10.2% barrels. He's certainly not unhittable. You want to have Padres on the other side of either one of those pitchers. I still think the upside's with Manaea. You're not getting a quality start from anybody on that staff. Junis won't go 6, certainly. Manaea won't qualify for it if he comes in. So it's much, much better where you can maybe get the win on the DK slate, and you can just get the very cheap SP2 option and hunt for a decent strikeout total in a few clean innings. On this slate, that's more than enough. I think that's very playable over there, assuming that Sean Manaea is going to pitch in this game at all. So stupid. 7,300 on the FanDuel slate. Again, without the quality start potential, it's a lot more limiting, and it's not an extreme discount. I do think he's on the board. If we get 4, 6, 7 strikeouts, there's some potential for that to have a path to being important on a very limited slate. You need basically Spencer Strider and Braxton Garrett to completely go bust, and then you maybe got a shot. So it's not off the board on FanDuel, but especially now with the extended question about who the hell is pitching in this game, it becomes a little bit dicey. What was the price for Junis? 65. Yeah, again, unless we get some kind of confirmation that Junis is getting an actual dose of innings here. Larry says no info, just a blurb on starting. Yeah, pain in the ass. Yeah, unless we get any kind of clarity about the Junis situation, I wouldn't roll those dice. Shannon called the no Manaea option in play early. No Lane Thomas in the Washington lineup? What a disaster. I have no idea what that's going to do to the ownership over there now. Maybe people just bail on the play because their favorite guy there isn't in. That'll probably have a lowering overall effect on that ownership. Because there's no Stone Garrett either, who is another key one. He's on the IL. He's another player that people know to key in on when they face a lefty. I kind of like some of those lefty options that we talked about now, or those guys who excel in the split against lefties that are a little bit more sneaky that we talked about, like the Kieberts, the Ildimaros, the Riley Adams, the Alex Calls of the world. Again, they're low ceiling, low end performers on the whole, but given how they might be a little bit sneaky, they're very, very cheap. You put them together, like I said before, with like the Giants, you get 2 good one-off spots for a premium with a lot of salary to spend, and you can put Spencer Strider in that lineup if you're building for FanDuel. I assume similar for DK, given where a lot of these options land across the Nationals and the Giants. There's a lot of value, and you can include the Marlins in that. You can include parts of the Padres lineup in that. There's a lot of ways to access Strider. There's a lot of ways to access Lance Lynn if you want him. Braves, Dodgers, any combinations that you want. This is really a play anything slate. You can get to anything that you want on this slate, given all these prices. Pedro Avila, 4.09 run total for the Giants in Vegas. That's pretty strong. It's the Padres favored in this game. They've got a 4.51. But that's kind of indicative of Avila having a little bit of talent. He hasn't completed the 5th yet. This is his 3rd actual start, 27 1/3 innings in a hybrid role. 4 1/3, allowed 5 runs on 5 hits, struck out 4 of 20 Brewers in the most recent outing. Not great. A 2/3 of an inning relief appearance between that and a start where he went 4 innings in a traditional start. That was in a bulk relief appearance against the Diamondbacks. He was decent in that one. 2 early August appearances, he struck out 7 Rockies at Colorado in 4 innings, which was a shocker. And then he followed that game up 4 2/3 against the Dodgers of all teams, struck out 7 in that one as well. If he can give me that kind of strikeout upside in even a short start, maybe he goes 5 today. Maybe you get a shot at the win. Seems like the quality start for this pitcher is also kind of off the board on the FanDuel slate. 6,700 though, with the idea of a little bit of strikeout upside against a free swinging Dodgers team. 27.2% strikeout rate for this Dodgers team, and we've seen some pitchers get this Dodgers team recently. This Giants team, rather. So I think there's a little bit of sneaky potential for Pedro Avila to succeed on this slate. 6,300 on DK. He is easily on the SP2 board. On FanDuel, with the dicey opportunity to get the quality start, given that it's only 6 or if we're counting multiple pitchers from the Giants, 7 or 8 potential pitchers today, with only, 4 of them having a shot at the quality start, maybe it comes off the board a little bit unless you're just giving it to Spencer Strider, giving it to Braxton Garrett, who also doesn't really pitch overly deep into games. The quality start becomes less and less important in a situation where nobody's going to book it. Now we're just hunting innings, we're hunting strikeouts. Strider obviously has the best chance at booking the quality start. Braxton Garrett has two games in which he's pitched beyond the 6th inning today this season. The most recent one was in June 22nd against the Pirates, his best game of the year. He struck out 13, monster game. He went 6 1/3 on May 20th against the Giants, struck out 8, another really good game. Other than that, he hasn't pitched out beyond the 6th inning. He's gone 6 exactly in his last 2 starts, 5 the start before that, 6, 5, 6 going back in time. Bunch of shorter outings, which was problematic for him in late June, early July, after going that 7-inning start. So I don't think we get much depth out of Braxton Garrett. There's no lock there for the quality start bonus for Braxton Garrett. So the overarching point is I do think even on FanDuel, with a limited shot at even going 5 innings, let alone 6, Pedro Avila, given the strikeout upside against this opponent, is on the board. Much, much better option on the DK slate at 63 is your SP2. You don't care about the quality start. You hope you get the win bonus. I do think he's got potential to go 5 here. Giants feeding strikeouts to opposing pitchers. They're also the second-ranked team for home run potential today. Even though Avila comes in with a 5.6% barrel rate, a 0.85% home run rate in the tiny sample this year, 42.3% hard hits. It's a little bit of noise from last year and the year before. He wasn't nearly this guy in terms of limiting power. And this is 4 innings, but it all counts. It all adds up to, 35 1/3 innings. So it's a very small sample no matter how you slice it, but it is adding up to some power on the Giants side of things. They ranked last out of 6 teams by projections, but second by home run upside. You can see 2 guys over the magic number and then a bunch of guys in this lineup at or about the magic number. So there is a lot of sneaky power on the Giants side of things. That's why I went to them as my cheap stack in my placeholder lineup there. I just like some of these bats. I made Thairo Estrada the overall home run pick of the day just because, I don't know, sitting there at 10.35 on a short slate, looked kind of like an oddball, probably the lowest owned out of all the guys that are going to be over that magic number. Certainly these guys, probably lower on the Jock Peterson in the same team. So I went with Thairo Estrada for the overall home run pick today. He's got 10 on the season. He's got 19 stolen bases, a 104 WRC plus, and 411 plate appearances. Hit 14 homers with a 141 ISO last year, 7 with a 207 the year before, in only 132 plate appearances. A little bit of reasonable pop. Not the greatest home run hitter by any means on the board, only a 4.6% barrel rate, 33.2% hard hit rates. It's kind of a trust the model pick. Lamont Wade Jr., if he leads off, 3,500, 2,600. I said if he leads off, but truly if he's anywhere on the lineup, as long as he plays today, I think he's an option. 13 home runs on the season, 9.19 in the home run model. I like him best in the leadoff role because he gains plate appearances for only 35.26 across sites. First base only, but valuable at the position. A 374 on base percentage, still walking at a 15.2% clip, still making fairly sturdy contact. He's cooled a lot since the outrageous start to the season. He's been stuck in he was at 10 home runs for a while, then he was at 11, and he's now up to 13 on the season. The ISO's down to 153, but he's still creating runs really well. He still gets on base, provides correlated scoring options with the power hitters in this lineup. Well, the power hitters in this lineup. So I like Wade off the top. I like Estrada. And then Mitch Haniger back in the lineup, 10.9% barrels, 45.5% hard hits. He only costs 3,700, 2,600. He's only got 4 home runs and a 138 ISO and a 75 WRC plus and 164 this season. I get that he doesn't look necessarily great right now. 11 home runs and 247 plate appearances last year. Didn't look great that season either, but 39 the last time he was fully healthy. 691 plate appearances in 2021. 232 ISO. Monster power from the right side for Mitch Haniger. On the right day, Mitch bends the slate to his will here, and he's very, very cheap. He's very easy to get to. The idea that you have Mitch, Jock Peterson, and Mike Yastrzemski, with Jock and Mike Yastrzemski both facing a mediocre righty, At 2,600, 2,600, and 2,700 on FanDuel, 37, 33, and 31, or excuse me, 37, 4,000, and 31 on the DK slate. This team is cheap. The upside on this team is cheap. Jock 12.21. That's third on the overall home run board. Third on the overall home run board, with a couple other San Francisco guys occupying key positions on the home run board. Outside of Atlanta, they got the best power upside, according to the old model today. Jock, key part of it, 12.5% barrels, 50.9% hard hits this season. That's down from 15.1 and 51.8, but it's still very good contact. 336 plate appearances, limited output, 12 home runs, a 185 ISO. You would expect more than that just with this premium contact alone, and you would expect more than that just from Jock Peterson if you've watched him over the last few seasons. 23 homers and 433 opportunities last year, 18 and 481 the year before, more like this year's output, but very high-end source of power on the right day against a limited right-handed pitcher. So I like Jock a lot. He'll probably gain some popularity in this lineup. I expect he's well-liked around the industry in this spot. Patrick Bailey, switch hitting catcher, 3,300, 2,300. Effective enough. 7 home runs and 98 WRC plus. Has cooled in the triple slash since his outrageously good start, but 292 plate appearances, been effective, 10.9% barrels, 40.9% hard hits, and he's very cheap where you need the position, 3,300. He's cheap on FanDuel as well. You don't necessarily need him. If you're building giant stacks and he's hitting in the middle of it, he is a key bat. But it's not one where I'm saying like, all right, I want to go out of my way so that I can get extra shares of Patrick Bailey as a differentiated catcher when I'm already looking at several different catcher options like Keibert Ruiz, Riley Adams from the same team on the Nationals. So if I'm putting both of those, there's only so many spots you can put these guys, I guess is what I'm saying. So Bailey's a little bit lower priority than some of the other catchers. And then there's premium catchers on some of the other teams that I want to just, want to get to. So Bailey's slips a little bit in terms of like the value-oriented catchers, but he's on the board. Everybody is. Yastrzemski, tons and tons of power as a lefty against a righty, 9.8% barrels, 47% hard hits overall, 11 home runs, a 204 ISO, 105 WRC plus, potentially a little bit sneaky, down lineup, very cheap at 3,100, 2,700, a 9.92 in the home run model. JD Davis has a 9.11 despite really slipping over the back half of the season. Still carrying 9.4% barrels, 45.8% hard hits, sitting at a 102 WRC plus, 15 homers, but has been limited. Most of the power did come against fellow righties this year, though. Riley Adams is out too? Son of a bitch. All right, let's swing back real quick because that's a weird version of that Nationals lineup. Yeah, let's go with Dom Smith, who sucks against everybody, instead of somebody who's actually good at hitting left-handed pitching. God damn stupid. That annoys me. This Nationals lineup is annoying, and that San Francisco pitching situation is annoying. All right. Dom Smith. Let me pull up the splits real quick. Stupid team. So the Nationals have opted to go from a guy who in his 70 plate appearances was slashing 349, 414, 603 to a guy who in 155 plate appearances against lefties is slashing 245, 303, 287 with a .042 ISO and 1 home run and a 65 WRC plus compared to Riley Adams's 175 WRC plus and 3 home runs and 254 ISO. That's a great decision, guys. So that's Dom Smith. Lefty, does not play well against lefties. Not overly good against anybody. Only a .81 ISO for the season and 86 WRC plus. Doesn't get on base enough. Doesn't hit for enough average. Doesn't hit for nearly enough power. It's not a good option. Michael Chavis is kind of interesting. He's not going to the lineup here as well. So also no Ildemaro Vargas. Gonna have to rebuild that placeholder. So we lose Vargas, we gain Chavis. Reasonable trade. It's not bad. Chavis on the FanDuel slate does have triple position eligibility for only 21. He loses shortstop eligibility though, so you don't get the shortstop eligibility that Ildemaro Vargas had. 25-21. It's a playable part. He does succeed against left-handed pitching this season in limited samples. 64 plate appearances against lefties. Both of his 2 home runs came in this split, a 150 ISO, but he's striking out 31.3% of the time. For his career, Michael Chavis at least as of very recently, still had a 200 plus ISO against lefties. For his career, Chavis 202, still at a 202 ISO against lefties, so does hit for pop against left-handed pitching. Only, though, as a word of warning, an 88 WRC plus, so still 12% worse than average creating runs, even in the split. Strikes out 32.8% of the time for his career against lefties, 31.1 against righties, 243, 274 on base, and a 445 slug against lefties, with 23 home runs in 464 plate appearances, compared to only 19 in 713 against righties. Not an overly good player. Was better by reputation on his way up several years ago with Boston. Never really landed at that level. Was with Pittsburgh for a minute. Now he's with the Nationals. Part-time player. Potential to succeed for cheap pricing. DK, you lose a multi-position guy and you only get a second baseman for $2,500. So I greatly prefer Lamaro Vargas because he's equally successful against lefties. But Chavis is functional. Jake Alou wasn't in that lineup earlier either. Who else did we lose? We also, Alex Cole moved up. Somebody else is missing from the original lineup that we had, but whatever. Jake Alou this season. And where'd my board go? Jake Alou against lefties. This is all set up, and now I got to make all these different clicks. He's been productive, but it's only 11 plate appearances, so temper expectations. 1 home run in 11 plate appearances against lefties. Does strike out 36.4% of the time, but a monumental 300 ISO and a 212 WRC+. Obviously, you go to him and Carter Kaboom, you're guaranteed 2 or 3 home runs and a monster power performance. No, you're not. But Kaboom up at the top of the board, if we're sorting by WRC+, in his 8 plate appearances against lefties, 283 WRC+, and 2 of his home runs. So they continue to be good in the split, but they took away a couple of the key bats that I was really interested in. Obviously, Lane Thomas coming out was a major dip. Then losing Riley Adams, losing Ildemaro Vargas. It's a downgrade for that stack that I was a little bit interested in. They become a little bit less sneaky, a little bit more gettable for Braxton Garrett. So maybe the overall theme here is a bump to Braxton Garrett, given that he's got Dom Smith in there now. Jake Alou, I know I just read off some nice numbers in an 11 plate appearance sample, but let's see him for another 4 or 5 plate appearances in a same-headed matchup before we make that decision. CJ, like I talked about, not great against lefties, so little bump to Braxton Garrett, little downgrade to the Nats side of that equation. Good thing there's only this game and the next game to talk about still, because it's 5 o'clock. Who bought the over? No, Larry, it's important news. You know, no apologies, buddy. Sorry for annoying you today. Yeah, it's not your fault, buddy. Just some dumb decisions by these teams. You think you can? Benny asks, you think you can roll with Strider Lynn? Does that have any upside as a move? Yeah, there is the idea of just like on a really limited slate of options, just throwing a blanket over the win, especially probably the prime threat to that approach is Braxton Garrett. Especially now, on the national side, but like really limited win equity for Adon, particularly with the downgrade in his lineup. Okay win potential for Garrett. Not nearly as much for Minaya, especially because you have no idea if he's even getting, into the game, let alone going to be in the right spot of the game as the bulk reliever to have the lead, to pitch well, to get the wins are weird in baseball. It's at the discretion of the official scorer. A starter needs to go 5, but if we're talking about relievers, then it's at the discretion of the official scorer who just, pitched the most effectively. So it's kind of weird. It is a little bit of a limiting factor for him for a win. Avila starting the game in a traditional start and hasn't completed 5 innings. So if you only get a 4 1/3 inning, takes the win off the books for him. So yeah, especially in that game, I think there's upside in just trying to throw the blanket over the win and rostering both these pitchers. Now, it's going to have a limiting impact on what you can do with bats, and you're going to be walking down the same path with bats as basically everybody else who takes that approach. So make sure that you differentiate your bats when you do that. But I do think there's a little bit of upside there. So we talked to Vila. We talked about the stupid Giants pitching situation. Let's talk a little bit on bats. We did go through most of the Giants bats. We were down to like J.D. Davis, right? Probably not get half these guys in this lineup now. Wade Meckler. 99 WRC plus in 45 plate appearances, but a really highly regarded hit tool. He was just called up at age 23, 45 plate appearances ago. In 174 AA plate appearances this season, 336, 431, 450 triple slash. Pretty good. 148 WRC plus. Definitely a kid who's regarded for his ability to put the ball in play, reach first base. So not uninteresting for 2,600, 2,500 on a weird little Giants lineup against a limited pitcher. And then Paul DeJong hiding at the bottom of the lineup, 9.61 in the home run model. 14 on the season. Yeah, he's slashing 204, 258, 356. He's got a 67 WRC plus. He strikes out 30.6% of the time. He only walks 5.6% of the time. He's got a limited contact profile, but he's a guy that we know hits home runs. Looking at DeJong's career history, and he's not as old as people might think. Like, people kind of write him off as he's at the back end of the career. He's washed. He got traded out of town. They didn't want him anymore. He's only 30. He only debuted in 2017. That season as a rookie, he hit 25 home runs. 19 home runs and 402 chances in 2021. 30 in 664 plate appearances in an actual full season in 2019. 19 in 2018. He's a good power hitting shortstop at a very cheap price at the bottom of this lineup, just kind of hidden down here. I like the option for Paul DeJong here. If I'm going to Giant stacks, I'm definitely going to include him. I like the power number that he's drawing. Probably will end up not being in the lineup because I'm talking about him so much, but I think that's a good sneaky option for only 2,900 on DK, 2,400 on FanDuel. This is a key to unlocking Spencer Strider. Padres side of things, very expensive bats up top for the three guys with very good home run marks. The obvious names, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Manny Machado, their three best power hitters. Tatis, down this season overall, 20 home runs and a 192 ISO. When we last saw him in 2021 in a full season, that was 42 home runs and a 328 ISO, 156 WRC plus. It's a much different player now, for variety of reasons. Let's say, some obvious, some maybe not obvious under the surface in terms of his swing or whatever it might be. But who knows what the cause of dipping from all this power down to just this production might be. 518 plate appearances, not far off the 546 plate appearances from that season. So we're talking about a very different player who is still kind of priced like he is that dramatically good power hitter. 5,800, 3,900. I know he steals bases, but I mean, this is kind of high for this level of output. There's a lot of other guys in the league that have done similar lines statistically that create runs 16% better than average that are not quite as highly priced. Who's comparable? Is there any comparable player on this slate? Nobody leaps to mind. There you go. Eddie Rosario. Outside of the stolen bases. Eddie Rosario has 20 home runs. He's got a 225 ISO. Compared to Tatis's 192. They've got the same home run total. Basically the same batting average. Basically the same run creation mark. So we're paying 5,800, 3,900 as compared to, at the same position, 4,100, 2,900 for basically the same guy minus the steals. You really want to pay that much for the additional stolen bases? It's just kind of an interesting way to look at Fernando Tatis, I think. Not quite the player that he's priced like. He does have a fantastic contact profile, 11.5% barrels, 50.8% hard hits. But so does Eddie Rosario. 10.8%. Well, the hard hits aren't there. Marcell Ozuna does, and he's cheaper. 15.9% barrels, 48.7% hard hits. By the way, he's got 31 home runs, similar batting average, way higher ISO, much better run creation. He's been better than Tatis. No stolen bases, but at that point, who really cares? I don't know. I'm just arguing that Fernando Tatis, probably a little high priced, definitely should not be more expensive than Juan Soto, like we've talked about a bunch of times. Better barrel rate, better hard hit rate, lower strikeout rate, much higher walk rate. 1 point off in the batting average. 5 more home runs, fewer stolen bases, a way better on-base percentage, a better slugging percentage, a better ISO, dramatically better. A dramatically better 30 percentage points better for run creation for Juan Soto. They play the same position. He should not be less expensive than him, but he is. 3,400 is stupid cheap for Juan Soto on the FanDuel slate. That is just a broken price. That's a $4,000 player on FanDuel, especially on a day where Tatis costs $39. Manny Machado is cheap. 3,400, 5,200 on DK at third base. Very cheap for Manny's talents. 10% barrels, 45.8% hard hits. That's fine. 25 home runs at 205 ISO. It's fine. He's a power hitter. He's way down from his previously very, very strong seasons in the triple slash. Last year, 298, 366, 531. The year before, 278, 347, 489. This year is way down to 249, 315, 454. That's just why he's discounted. He's still, for our purposes, a very, very productive third base bat. Xander Bogaerts, also struggling, also really, really cheap because of it. 4,700, 2,800. He's down to 259, 330, 394, 104 WRC plus. He's kept it above water the entire season. He's obviously down from the shortstop who had 307, 377, 456 last year with a 134 WRC plus. But he's still got an okay home run total, okay stolen base total. He's still a contributor. He can still get involved and have a monster, 4-hit day on any given slate. It's still Xander Bogaerts in there. I'm happy to get to him at 47.28. And then you get some interesting discount options down here. Garrett Cooper's never popular. 2,900, 2,400 at first base. He's easy to get to. 14 home runs on the season, a 163 ISO. Little bit of pop in the bat. 10.4% barrels, 41.4% hard hits. Strikes out way too much, doesn't walk enough. Limited option, but potentially a little bit sneaky down the lineup. Luis Campusano is the better hitter between their two catchers. Gary Sanchez is the much better power hitter. But Campusano makes decent contact, 8.1% barrels. He's got 5 home runs and just 107 plate appearances, a 192 ISO. Either one of the catchers, depending on who's in the lineup, or both, if they're both in, are playable in this on both sides. Matthew Batten, 2,600 on the DK slate, first and third. Dead minimum price on the FanDuel slate, third base only. Was it third base? I minimized the thing. Third base only. Matthew Batten this season. 2 homers and 34 chances at this level. 12 homers and 27 stolen bases in 413 plate appearances at AAA, but he's 28 years old. He had really strong seasons in 21 and 22 in the minors in AAA, but he's also, was advanced at 26 and 27 years old for that level also. So I think we take the minor league numbers with a grain of salt, but the fact that they're on, focused primarily on his major stolen base total, that's an athleticism that just translates no matter what, whether he does need to get to first base, obviously, and he's delivered that in the small sample so far. So given that we're looking to him for speed and he's hit a little bit, I think he's in play easily, particularly from the dead minimum at third base on the FanDuel slate. Not that you're going to him all that frequently above Manny Machado, but to work in as a min-priced util option, I think that's perfectly fine. He doesn't, replacing Garrett Cooper with him on the DK slate for 300 less is not all that big a downgrade. That's not problematic by any means. Potentially sneaky, interesting guy at the bottom of the lineup there. And then you've got Trent Grisham, who makes really, really good contact. 13.3% barrel rate, technically leads this team in 479 plate appearances. He's the everyday player that leads this team in barrels, which is absurd. 12 homers, 12 steals, doesn't get nearly enough for it. A 158 ISO, 91 WRC plus, sitting at the Mendoza line at 200, 312, 357. Not a good hitter, strikes out 29% of the time, also walks 12.9% of the time. Really weird hitter, weird statistical output. 2,825. I think you can stick him in the outfield a few times, especially if you're building a bunch of Padres stacks, which I think is probably viable here. You do potentially run into a little bit of a buzzsaw for strikeouts if Sean Manaea is on form on the right day for 3-4 innings. He might shut this team down a little bit, but I think around the edges they've probably got a little bit of upside. Although Junis, a good strikeout pitcher himself to start the game, so everything's in play on a day like today. They've got stars, they've got value guys. It's an interesting lineup. I can't wait to see what's actually in it. Stephen Leibowitz says we blow by 5:30 counted. Oh, yeah. No doubt, buddy. King of Smack says Braves hit Lynn before the trade. Braves hit everybody. I didn't look at game by game or anything like that. Totally take your word for it, but that chalks up kind of into the it matters to some degree maybe, but I don't really focus on it. I don't really care. One game against anybody, any team can get to anybody. Lynn has been more gettable overall this season, though, than he has been in the past. I think that's the key factor that you take away from that. The Braves have been elite against everybody. Lynn's had his bumps against a lot of teams this year, a lot of teams that are worse than the Braves. So I think that's your primary takeaway there, but it's worth noting. Podigen's got it done. Bell, Albies, Berger, Arcia, Ozuna, Hayward, Betts, Olsen on FanDuel. Pray for his DFS baseball soul. I don't dislike that, buddy. Olsen, Ozuna, and Riley all smashed homers against him. Yeah, again, that's that could be any given, throw a dart at any given day for the Braves on the entire season, and you might come away with that result. Ozuna, Olsen, and Riley all hitting home runs. Riley's got 31. Olsen's got 43. Ozuna's got 31. That's outrageous. Look at this lineup. Look at how good these guys are. 7 players in the 9-man lineup, the everyday lineup. These guys mostly play every single day also. Have 20 home runs or more. And then the bottom 2 guys have 16 and 12. The average Braves starter has 26 home runs this year. The average WRC plus is 30% above average for run creation. They're stupid good. There's a couple guys with some strikeouts, but nobody's egregious for strikeouts. Nobody above 25%. A lot of hitters who draw some great walk rates. Amazing contact numbers for the most part. Just a spectacular team. They're just way too good. Break up the Braves. The Dodgers on the other side. Elite lineup themselves. These 2 guys could be in this lineup. These 2 guys are as good as anybody on that team. These 2 guys are close to as good as anybody on this team. Will Smith and Sean Murphy are neck and neck. They do different things at the catcher spot to some degree, but they're neck and neck for, one of the top catchers in baseball, along with like Adley Rutschman and a couple other people. But premium catcher options. Max Muncy, not a great hitter overall, but a massive source of power from the left side. He's got 31 home runs, same as Riley, same as Ozuna on the season. So the top 4 is neck and neck on these 2 teams. This is a potential showdown of what would it be, the NLCS probably. Alan S. says Coors hangover for the Braves. I mean, that's not something I can quantify or really put much stock in. So I don't tend to think that way. What it is though, and what you can maybe focus on to that extent is it's a much lower run total. It's not a hangover necessarily, but they're in a much worse hitting environment against a much, much better pitcher than they faced the last couple days. And the run total is a full 4 runs lower than it was yesterday. So that's what your hangover's made up of, right? It's not that they're going to suddenly not be as good because they're not at Coors anymore. It's just the opportunity is greatly lessened. So yes, but not because of they were just at Coors. It's just because the numbers were just at Coors is more the case. So up and down, I think both of these lineups are playable. We talk about the 3 lefties in the outfield a lot for value plays in this lineup. My favorite out of the group is probably still Jason Hayward with his 219 ISO, his 125 WRC plus, 13 homers in a very managed sample, 297 plate appearances. Outman's very good with 17 and 14. And then Peralta, a little bit below average overall for run creation, not getting on base enough, doesn't draw enough walks, but does limit strikeouts to just 15.9%. Hits for the best average out of that group, and he's cheap. I think these guys are all in play in any combination with these guys. They don't quite even out to the Ozuna Rosario part of the lineup here, but they're okay. This part of this lineup is where the Braves gain ground on the Dodgers, and then in the bottom 2 spots, the Braves separate by a pretty wide margin. Orlando Arcia, Michael Harris are much, much better than Enrique Hernandez and Michael Busch. So, not to completely go without talking about those guys. Busch is kind of interesting. 24 home runs in 424 plate appearances at AAA this season. He's a highly regarded kid. He's a kid that they expect to be on this team and hit for power. So for 2,400, 2,500, third base, it's not ideal to have him at third base, especially when that precludes you from playing Max Muncy in the same lineup on the DK slate. You've got to use one of them at util on the FanDuel slate because Muncy doesn't have dual position eligibility anymore. But I think Busch is in play for the cheap price, especially, again, small slate, six teams total to choose from. Basically, everybody's in play. If you're building 150 lineups, you should have everyone who's starting in at least one lineup. But I think Busch could be prioritized more so than some other low-end options from around the slate that people might not be focused on. Enrique Hernandez a lot less so. He's a journeyman. He's a utility guy. Does play 3 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DK. He's very cheap. He's easy enough to get to. He's got 8 home runs, but a 114 ISO, 70 WRC plus this season. Not nearly this. It was never all that great and not nearly what he once was. So diminished version of Enrique Hernandez at the bottom of the lineup. The top end, obviously, Mookie, Freddie are MVP candidates. I know I just kind of blew through the top of it, but MVP candidates both. 36 homers, 25 homers, all these runs, good amount of RBIs. They both steal bases. Freddie Freeman, 17 stolen bases on top of all his other contributions from first base. Is just that alone makes him really valuable. A 169 WRC plus for Freddie, a 175 for Mookie. They're ridiculous. Smith, very, very good at limiting strikeouts, drawing walks. A lot of low strikeout rates here. Low strikeout rates here. Low strikeout rate there. Pretty good walk rates for a lot of these guys. Obvious power for a lot of these guys. Which could maybe potentially have a limiting impact on super expensive Spencer Strider. 12.5, 12,000. That's got a limiting impact by comparison to every other pitching option on the slate as to what you can get to in combination with Spencer Strider. Now, like I said before, he is easy to get to. There are so many value combinations that you can put Spencer Strider in a lot of different lineups, in a lot of combinations that still probably access, well, not these guys because he's pitching against those guys, but a couple of these guys. Two of these guys maybe is like, a two-man, or one of these guys is a one-off with another premium one-off from a different team, and then two three-mans, depending on where you're building, obviously. I think there's a lot of ways to get to Spencer Strider and still have very, very high-end bats in your lineup tonight. But you can't get to him with the most elite combinations of bats. He's just too expensive, and they're just too expensive. So like going all of these guys with Spencer Strider, you're just not going to be able to build. So there is a bit of a limiting factor. And certainly in a season where he's been a little bit more gettable, if he goes bust at all, or even if he just slips for a couple of runs and shaves a little bit off the total, and anybody else is at least somewhat effective, that gains ground rapidly when you're talking about like Lance Lynn for 8,800. If he's within, a handful of points of Spencer Strider, that's a better performance for our purposes. So if he slips at all, and he has slipped a lot of times this year, 3.46 ERA, a much, much better and a much more honest 2.88 xFIP is still fantastic. He's giving up 2.9% home runs. That's still very, very good overall, but it's way up from the 1.33 he gave up last year. Barrels are up from 6.1% to 9.1%. Hard hits are technically down. Exit velo is basically the same. There's a little bit of happenstance in here, but he's been a little bit more vulnerable. He's been more vulnerable third time through the lineup. And this is a spectacular lineup that might already have a limiting impact, even as good as he is, on his strikeout total. 38.1% strikeouts. He's the best strikeout pitcher in baseball by far. 19.7% swinging strikes, a 34.4% CSW, leads the league in both categories. But for the money, for DFS purposes, he's got to be perfect. Not perfect game, but he's got to be perfect over 6-7 innings tonight. He's got to get both bonuses. He's got to strike out 8 to 10 Dodgers. It's a tall order for Spencer Strider to really deliver today. Now, you might get the slate where Spencer Strider, a home run from your first baseman, a home run from your third baseman, 2 runs scored, a stolen base from an outfielder, and then a bunch of zeros wins this slate because it's so small, because it's so stupid. That's on the board. So just booking the raw point potential of Spencer Strider is important. He is easily the best pitching option on this slate. It's just got some limiting potential given how high priced he is by comparison to everybody else. To put it clearly, I will have tons of Spencer Strider on this slate. But he is not safe. It is the Dodgers. And it is a major, major price differential. So I think it's important. I think it's crucial to this slate to spread out, not only to Lance Lynn, not only to Braxton Garrett, but to the Pedro Aviles and the other guys of the world. J187's here. Says this slate feels like way too much compared to what it actually is. I agree with that. Lot to go through on this one. We've been talking for we're coming up on the 90-minute mark. Pay that 90-minute over. We're going over. J187, our pal, friend of the show, friend of the DFS channel, took a gig. Congrats to him with our pals over at Stochastic. So congrats to J187. Good guy, well deserved, successful DFS player. I know people were campaigning him for him to join this channel and provide access to his models and to his optimizer that he wrote in Python. I'll have to figure out how to do that myself now. But no, nothing but love, and congratulations to our pal J187 here, taking that, getting that gig with Stochastic. It's a great place to work. I think he's going to do really, really well over there, and another reason to continue to go over to their site and just check it out. Hiring a good person like that. So congrats to him, and hopefully he'll still hang out with us in our show, on our shows, and in our Discord as well. So Lance Lynn, 8,800, 9,500. Definitely a piece of value here. He's had his bumps for sure this season. A 5.56 ERA tells us all we need to know about that. Over 150 and 2/3 innings, 26 starts. 25.8% strikeout rate, though, is still very Lance Lynn, and the xFIP is only at 4.08. So that tells the truth about what he's really been doing on the mound. He's run into a lot of premium contact, made a lot of mistakes, had some issues, where he's not getting help where he needs it. So 5.16% home runs, 10.2% barrels is problematic for sure. It feeds directly into the Braves and what they do well. But I do think that there's potential for him to succeed, even against this elite Braves lineup. He is the second best pitcher on talent on this entire slate. He's succeeded against elite competition for years and years. We've seen it happen more times than I can think of. So Lance Lynn is a very good pitcher. But like I said at the top of the show, he's at the bottom of the board. He's ranked 6 out of 6 projections just because of how good the Braves are on the other side. So it's a little bit tough to fully endorse him here. There's a good opportunity for him to get lit up, or at best, have not a great game. But there's also a path to success. Like I said, he's in the basement, but he knows where the attic is. He knows where the ceiling is. He can definitely get there. He can rack up some strikeout totals, even against the semi-stingy Braves. He's just got to worry about this elite lineup with Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, Olsen, everybody in that lineup. So there's no safe spot. There's no moment of rest unless you get like a Kevin Pillar day, but I don't expect it. So Lynn is in a lot of danger here, but I think he's a crucial part of the slate at 8,800, 9,500. If you're stacking Braves, everybody in the lineup 1 through 9 is playable in any combination with one another. They're all spectacular. Like I showed just before, 30% better than average collectively for run creation. The average player in that starting lineup has 26 home runs. They're just elite. 2 of my favorite options from the 8-9 spots around all of baseball, let alone on this slate, 4,200, 2,800, and 4,500, 3,200 for Arcia and Michael Harris is just too cheap. Sean Murphy, maybe by comparison in terms of plate appearances, loses a half plate appearance by comparison to Will Smith, Keibert Ruiz, guys who hit a little higher in the lineup. But he's obviously a spectacular power hitting catcher. 252 ISO, 20 home runs, strikes out at a 22.7% rate, but walks at 10.6. That's where I said him and Will Smith do things a little bit differently. Smith, terrific at not striking out, 15.7% strikeout rate, hits for a little bit more average. Actually, no, 271 to 273. Mert's got a pretty good batting average this year. 380 on base for Sean Murphy, spectacular. 366 for Will Smith, which is odd, just with the higher walk rate. Fantastic options on both sides in this one. It's difficult to declare one of these teams fully better than the other one. The Braves are a little bit better, but they're just excellent. Both sides are excellent at this. Trey says at least Terry goes around rants about movies. Terry's rants are more random, and we know which buttons to push with Terry. J187's on the data side. No shows or anything. No, not porting the Opta over at the moment or anything. Just working the data side of the tools. That's cool, bud. I think you'll definitely have some good input over there. Joker's here. He's licking my hand. So, Spencer Strider has to be on top. Braves bats, Dodgers bats, Lance Lynn. But everything's in play from this one once again. What did we not talk about here? Talked about Michael Busch. We talked about the 3 lefties. Max Muncy, heart of the lineup, 5.34 in the home run model. Only 48-38. 31 homers on the season. Muncy's always a decent option for power. If you're stacking Dodgers, he's kind of a critical part given that he's so cheap for what he does on the field. Obviously, everybody in the Braves lineup, like I said, in whatever combination. Olsen leads the team for contact, 17.2% barrels, 57.5% hard hits. What about Ronald Acuna? Comes out of Colorado where he costs $7,000 to face Lance Lynn in Los Angeles, and his price only came down by $300 to $6,700. Only came down to $4,900 on the FanDuel slate. Ridiculous. Let's take another look at the pitching board, and then we'll punch out and start building some lineups for this thing. It's going to be quick. Pitching board, Spencer Strider, all alone. It's Mount Spencer today. Very top of the board. flag planted firmly at the top of the mountain. But there's a path to failure. There's a path to, and it doesn't have to be failure. The Dodgers, again, do not have to light Spencer Strider up today. 3 runs could ruin Spencer Strider's day at that price. He could have a good start. He could go out there. If he books a quality start, gives up 3 runs, but still strikes out 10, then he's probably still going to win the slate. But if he goes out, only strikes out, let's say 6, goes 5 2/3, falls short of the quality start on FanDuel, maybe they're not winning the game, so he doesn't get the win bonus. There are ways that he's limited, even by a minor little outburst by the Dodgers. They don't have to crush him. At those prices, with that big a price differential between him and the other good options, let alone the very cheap options, who all project out similarly to one another, there's a clear path to success. There's a clear path to potential failure there, given how he's priced. Easily the best option on the slate. Lance Lynn, from the bottom of the board, has the exact same thing. There's a clear path to failure, and then there's also a path to success. He is good enough to pitch through that Braves lineup. He's got a good strikeout rate. He's got to avoid the home run mistakes. He's got to get some good defense. Got to get a little help. But we've seen Lance Lynn succeed too many times to write him off, even against the Braves, when he's at this big a discount to the best pitcher on the slate. And he projects like all the other mid-range options. Braxton Garrett gets an uptick for that diminished version of that Nationals lineup. They are better against lefties overall. Some of the guys who are better against lefties are in the lineup, but several of the guys who are their best against lefties are not in the lineup today. Major downgrades to that Nationals lineup. So that takes away a little bit of the appeal to going to Nationals bats, and it boosts Braxton Garrett just a little bit beyond where he was originally projected, and he's very cheap, 87, 82. He is a playable SP2. If you combine Lance Lynn, Braxton Garrett on the DK slate, I don't think you're making a mistake. Garrett and Strider's probably in play. We talked about throwing a blanket over the win in the Atlanta and Dodgers game, and then just saying like none of these guys are likely to get a win. If Braxton Garrett fails, then I can probably book a win with one of these 2 guys. We talked about that being a potentially viable strategy, albeit at a high price. It's the highest possible pitching combination on the board at 21-3, but it's not undoable. Avila, kind of on the board, but potentially limited innings. Hasn't completed 5 innings yet. Maybe he gets 5 for us. Maybe he's got a shot at the win. I do think there's a decent shot at a high strikeout total. This is a 4.5 inning projection. Minaya, we think he's pitching. If he does, he's probably got a decent shot at a handful of strikeouts, 5-6 strikeouts, 3 or 4 clean innings. For 5,000 on the DK board, he's easily there. Potentially a shot at a win, but no shot at a quality start on FanDuel where that matters, for more money than these other guys who are actually starting their games. Avila, I don't necessarily think has a shot at the quality start bonus anyway on FanDuel. Given that he's never completed 5, I doubt he's going to complete 6. And even if he does complete 6, no guarantees we're getting less than 3 runs or less. So dicey there, but strikeout potential for cheap pricing on both sides. Juan Adon, not very talented. 6,400, 5,400. An okay-ish matchup against the Marlins. At least he doesn't have to face Jorge Soler. But the lowest end out of these guys, but does have the potential to maybe pitch 6 innings and have a shot at this quality start, have a shot at the win. Nothing in here is great. These 3 pitchers are all good. These 2 guys are in bad matchups. This guy's elite. This guy's good in a bad matchup in a weird season. This guy's just good, but technically not in the best matchup possible. If you take Strider out of the equation, I think Braxton Garrett's easily my favorite pitcher. Dimitri's here. What's up, D? I really didn't want to play this slate, but here I am. I feel the same way, buddy. This was one that not overly appealing. I do like the weird ones, but I like the weird ones when I've got a little bit more room to work. Like this kind of a slate, this messy a pitching slate, with weird options. Like throw me a game that has like a 4th game on this slate between like the Pirates and Royals. And I'm much more happy about this slate. I want like 1 more game, 2 more teams to work with, 4 more teams to work with would be dynamite. That would be perfect. I love a slate like that. But yeah, this is a little bit too limited because so many people are going to be on a lot of the same combinations that it just becomes difficult to differentiate without getting like overly weird in a lot of situations. But that's obviously the approach. Like I said, my preferred path, guys, to round out the show here, to getting different, on slates. I'll leave the home run board up there while I talk about it. But just to reiterate, my preferred path, rather than saying, all right, I'm going to let 2 hitters against my pitcher sneak in, especially on such a thin pitching slate with so many not at all reliable options for even the win bonus, let alone clean innings, etc. My preferred path is to just say, all right, I'm going to embrace some differentiated constructions than I would normally get to, like a 4-man stack with 4 one-offs on FanDuel, or a 3-3-2, or a 3-3-1-1, even like a 3-2-3-2-2-1 kind of a configuration. Like, I'm going to let it fly in terms of what's allowed to come into my portfolio of lineups today. And I think that's the better way to access unique combinations, to access high-end plays and make sure that you're capitalizing on the discounted pitching. On a slate like this, it's never a mistake to leave money on the table for baseball as long as you're getting to good stacks, good pitching, and you've got a lineup that you like. I have no issues with leaving any amount of money on the table for a baseball lineup. But on a slate like this, where you can go to a 3-3 one-off, high-end one-off, high-end one-off with a cheap pitcher, with so many cheap pitching options that all look similar, I do think there is ground to be gained in by focusing on trying to spend a little bit more of your money. And that's where you gain on differentiating those combinations. Like if you're just forcing 4-4s or 4-3-1s or 5-3s, 5-2-1s, it'll just run into spots where positionally there won't be expensive enough options to spend all the salary. Where if you let it do what it wants, maybe you're gaining by having, now I can use that guy who costs $5,500 on DraftKings or whatever. So just different ways to look at it. King of Smack is playing a Strider lineup with Miami and Washington game stack. Am I crazy? I'm only playing that one, though others are mixed. No, I don't think you're crazy playing that. I think both of those lineups are easily in play. The Washington side of things is a little bit downgraded. Watch your popularity in that one. I'm not sure where it's going to fall, given that Lane Thomas and some of the other appealing guys are out of it. Probably less. Miami looked like they were drawing some popularity early in the day. They'll obviously get a little bit more, given it's a matchup against a pretty crappy pitcher. But I think that's a good combination. I think that game's got a decent chance to have a pretty good run total in it. And Strider's obviously at the top of the board pitching-wise. Just watch your popularity with it. Nats are either scoring 8 or 0, says Trey. There's no in between. Yeah, it kind of feels that way. All right, gang. Coming up on 5:36. We paid the 90-minute over. We've talked about everything up and down. I don't really know what else to say. I'm not at a loss for words. I could obviously just sit here and keep on rambling, but I don't want to waste your guys' time. There's 88 people hanging out here with us. I don't want to waste 88 people's time. I could. You guys want to talk movies? What do you want to talk about? Star Wars? Anybody watching the Ahsoka show? Any Star Wars fans out there? I like Star Wars. I'm actually rewatching the Rebels series just to remind myself what happened in that, since it's basically this is season 5 of Rebels. Any Star Wars fans? Any Star Wars nerds out there with me? D hasn't started lineups yet. Yeah, me neither. I'm here hanging out with you guys. Hit the like button for me. Hit the subscribe button. I appreciate you guys. You guys rock just hanging out, especially on a stupid slate like this. Middle of the afternoon on a 3-gamer. Really appreciate it. Trey asks, thoughts on 5-man stacks on DK? Yeah, I'm all on board on 5-mans, but like I said, I do want to embrace differentiation. I do think there's, the 5-man is still critical. The full stack is still critical to a slate like this, where odds are there's going to be one very high scoring team that you're going to need to have a fair amount of those players in your lineups. So that's what we're looking for. You got to drill that team, and then you can grab a couple guys from other spots. But on a slate like this, it does open up the opportunity to have a game where, all right, one team went off, so you need 4 or 5 guys from that team, but then there were a few runs on this one, a few runs on that one, a few runs on that one, and a lot of the options are the same, so it just depends on how it falls positionally. So that's why I open up to a lot more combinations, where on more complete slates, I like just getting full stack together, and just saying, all right, odds are 2 of these teams are going off. There's just a lot less opportunity with only 6 teams in play for 2 of them to fully go off. Trey says, I don't know what Ahsoka is. Ahsoka Tano. It was Anakin's Padawan. She's a major figure in Star Wars outside of the main movies. She was a critical part of the Clone Wars series, and then a critical part of the Rebels series, and now she's got her own series in live action. She's being played by what's her face? Oh shit! Damn it, she's gorgeous. I love this girl. The hell's her name? I can't believe I'm blanking on what's her name. And why did it not come up? Rosario Dawson. I can't believe I couldn't come up with her name. She's great. Anyway, she looks just like the cartoon, which was weird. So everybody for years was like, she's got to play that part if they ever do it in live action. And bang, there it is. Phantom Menace might be the best Star Wars. Jake, you're a madman. I don't dislike the prequels nearly as much as I used to, or nearly as much as a lot of people do. But Phantom Menace might be the best Star Wars. That is a bold statement, my friend. That is a hot take. You are out on a limb. I do think there's some great scenes in that one. Don't get me wrong. Darth Maul's fantastic. The duel with Darth Maul is one of the better lightsaber duels overall. There's a lot of cool shit in that movie, but there's also a lot of clunkiness in that one. Frederick Doot, yes, I am Team Last Jedi. Very much so. That was the best of the recent trilogy. I loved the first one, just because it was like, holy shit, we're back in the lived-in, real, it felt like a Star Wars movie where the prequels were glossy and too CGI-y and all of that. So just that first one, seeing it in the theater and everything, it was just like, wow, like this was what I was looking for, really hit the heartstrings. But like movie-wise, I thought they did super interesting things in Last Jedi. I liked that they broke the stupid mystery boxes about like who is Rey, who's her family. I liked that they created or tried to create, which then they immediately erased in the third one. I liked that they started saying like, hey, there are other storylines in this universe than the Skywalker family. There are other Force sensitives. There are other things that, need to be focused on. I really liked a lot of the things that they set up. I also liked using the traditional seafaring pirate story of the ship, running out of food, but they're a little bit faster so they can stay ahead, but the others are gaining ground and they're chasing them and they'll eventually overtake them. That's a classic storytelling mechanism that they used. I thought the solution was really creative with the Holdo maneuver, not to spoil what happens for people. So yeah, I really liked that one quite a bit. J187 says, I like the prequels more than most people, but none of them are the best Star Wars. I agree with that. Empire Strikes Back is the correct answer. If I have to rank Star Wars movies, as somebody asked, Empire, Rogue One, New Hope, Last Jedi. Now, Force Awakens, Last Jedi. Well, just because it meant more to me, I guess. Force Awakens, Last Jedi. All three of the original prequels, and then the last one. And by the way, if you're not watching, or if you didn't watch the Rebels and the Clone Wars cartoons, they're terrific. If you're a Star Wars fan, if you're not Star Wars fans, you should have turned the show off a couple minutes ago. Let's be honest here. But if you are Star Wars fans and you've not seen those, they're on Disney Plus. The cartoons and all of that, they're very, very good. And then the live action shows have been fun. Darth Maul fight montage was elite, says Frederick Doot. What else is going on out there? King of Smack says I'm gonna go watch a rerun of Baywatch. There you go. One of those free, it's like Freevee or one of those where you get like when you get an Airbnb and they don't have like actual TV, but they've got like Freevee, live TV or whatever. There's a full-time 24/7 Baywatch channel on one of those. When I was in Florida, I was like, oh, that's weird. King of Smack says Empire was the best. Yeah, I think that's a fairly universal take. Frederick Root, I never did read any of the expanded universe novels. I know, tangentially some of the stories. I read a couple of the comics as a kid, but I never actually read any of the expanded universe novels, which I understand are very good. That's where Grand Admiral Thrawn originally came from, who's a major figure in the Rebels show and will be in this Ahsoka show. Andor was great, Frederick Doot. I really liked Andor. I liked the Obi-Wan show too. I thought that was fun. Bringing Hayden Christensen back to play Darth. I thought that was fun. King of Smack, I'm going to watch a leg with the big booze and watch her run. I was certainly a Baywatch fan back in the day. That hit at a very, very crucial time in a young man's life. When Baywatch was on, I was probably like, I don't remember what specific years it was, but call it when I was like 10 to when I was like 15 or somewhere thereabouts. Not bad. Pam Anderson, Erica Laniak. She was always my favorite. If you don't know Erica Laniak, she was the girl who pops out of the cake in Under Siege, the Steven Seagal movie. That was like the only other thing she did. Well, she did that, and when she was a kid, she acted up. She was in Drew Barrymore's class in the movie E.T. Very different role. Trey says, I think Star Wars is real life and they're hiding it. We can't be the only intelligent species. I agree with that. We're not intelligent. Yeah, I also agree with that. But I think it's foolish to think that we're the only intelligent life, let alone the only life in the universe. It's just too damn big. It's a mathematical impossibility in my mind. Maybe we'll never meet them. Maybe we'll never get here. The universe is really, really big. It's really difficult to get anywhere. Physically impossible, some might say. But somewhere out there, these same chemical configurations and mistakes and completely different ones leading to completely different forms of life all came together, and so on and so forth. King of Smack met Pam Anderson in person one time. She was beautiful to me and got a hug. Not bad, buddy. Did you try to go to the Borat move and throw a bag over her and drag her out over your shoulder? Not bad. Never met Pam. I met some playmate when I was a kid. I was at we were in Florida. We used to go to Florida every year or every other year for Christmas to visit my uncle, the one who was up the other day, my mom's brother. So they were living in Miami. We would go down there one year. They would come up to Jersey one year. And every time we went down there, we would do a lot of different things. And we went to a Heat game one time. It's me, my dad, my uncle, my two cousins, and they're little kids at that point. I was probably, 12, somewhere around there. And we were sitting in pretty good seats behind the basket. And they were like looking down. My dad and my uncle were like nudging each other, looking down by like where the bench was, like the courtside seats. And there's just a gorgeous, like playmate looking, obvious playmate looking, if you know what I mean, kind of a girl down there. And they sent me down. I had no idea who she was. I was too young to know. But I knew that I was walking up to, this model looking girl with these gigantic boobs. And they sent me over to get her autograph. So I was like, hey, can you please sign this? She wrote me like a nice big autograph. I don't remember if I got a hug or not. But I remember getting her autograph. I couldn't tell you who she was, what her name was. Bubbles BX says, didn't you hear about biologicals? Are we talking about, what are we talking about with biologicals? I thought you were going to bring up the Harvard astrophysicist who was mining the bottom of the ocean for the particles of that meteor and claims that he found some. And he's got little spheroids that are interstellar spheroids that may or may not be alien technology, according to him. I wanted to hear her take on the Tommy Lee yacht. I don't think Pam's a fan of that. That movie or that series was pretty good, though. The Pam and Tommy Lee series with the Winter Soldier, whatever his name is. He played Tommy Lee. And I have no idea what the girl's name is, but she did a pretty good approximation of Pam Anderson. That was on Hulu, I want to say. That was pretty good. Anyway, Matt Olson, Fernando Tatis off the top of the board, although, like I said, I prefer Juan Soto if we're talking power. Tons of the Giants, tons of the Braves. A lot of power showing through for the Giants. Tyler Estrada was the home run pick of the day. Yeah, Larry, the talking schlong was a bit much in that series. I don't disagree with that. Congress hearing said they found foreign biologic. Oh, yeah, the guy who's, the friend of a friend who works for the government guy. Yeah. I mean, that guy was in a role for a long, long time, and they've obviously, they're having official hearings about stuff. There's obviously stuff going on. But I think, so, until we get direct, I did this, I was involved, I took it here. Anytime it's, I had access, I was part of this program, and somebody who I trust within that program told me that somebody that they trust once was in Italy in 1942 and working with the Mussolini government. I mean, it gets out to extended stretches and, stretches of belief to some degree at that point. I want the guy to come out and just, I did it, I was there, this was me. But the ones that I put tons of faith in are like, all the accounts from pilots and the radar feeds and everything. Like, there's clearly stuff going on. Whether it's interstellar or whether it's just earthbound, the Chinese or the Russians or whoever building some cool shit. Hopefully it's somebody, like if that's the case, I hope it's somebody that nobody expects. Like, oh my God, Uruguay was building all these cool manless drones all this time that defy physics. It was Uruguay. Who would have expected it? That's what I want. I don't want it to be China or Russia or us. Let's give it to some country that nobody would have expected. Not saying there's anything wrong with Uruguay. It's a beautiful country. There's beautiful women in Uruguay, too. I'm just saying nobody would expect Uruguay, like the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition to end with a Monty Python quote. With that in mind, guys, it's 10-6. Probably time to start building lineups for this stupid little three-gamer. I wish you guys luck. It's going to be weird. Don't forget, we're starting with one game, and then we've got like 2.5 hours till the next game starts, and then another half hour till the next game. So don't get excited about those early results because it might not matter. I appreciate it, boys and girls. Everybody out there, you guys rock. Somebody go out there, go win something tonight. I'll see you tomorrow.